The Pentagon is reportedly trying to narrow down the number of people who may have had security clearance to the trove of classified documents first leaked on social media back in early March. As the search for the source of the leak continues, Washington is busy doing damage control. The revelation suggests the U.S. has spied on key allies, including Israel and South Korea. On Tuesday, Seoul dismissed a significant number of the files, calling them fake. The Pentagon says it's ordered an internal review describing the leak as a very serious national security risk. But the Washington Post is reporting that the leaked information could implicate a U.S. ally, Egypt, in the sales of weapons to Russia. The documents reportedly reveal Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi ordering the production of 40,000 rockets for Moscow, and that he told officials to keep it secret to avoid problems with the West. I want to bring in now Amy Hawthorne. She is the Deputy Director of Research at the Project on Middle East Democracy. She joins me tonight from Washington. Amy, it's good to have you with us. So what is your reaction to the al-Sisi leak, assuming, of course, that what we're hearing is true?
Right. If the leak is accurate, as a longtime Egypt watcher, I find it stunning that Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi would take the risk of going against the U.S. and Europe top global priority right now, which is defeating Russia in Ukraine. And Egypt, of course, does have relations with Russia, but it also has very close and very important ties with the United States and with Europe. And I find it quite stunning that President Sisi would risk those relations by making such a bold and potentially illegal move.
And the Washington Post, Amy, quoted an official saying, "We have no indication that any such plan has been executed." Now, that is not exactly the same thing as saying that Egypt did not seriously consider ordering the rockets.
Absolutely. You noticed something very important about the wording of that quote. And John Kirby today, I believe, also used kind of a carefully worded response, which is in the present tense, the U.S. doesn't see any evidence that this sale or this transfer is happening now. I haven't seen any denial by the U.S. government yet that the Egyptian government was, not planning such a sale. What I have no information, of course, but I would speculate that since February 17th, when this alleged report that was leaked was prepared, intelligence report, senior U.S. officials have probably been engaging their Egyptian counterparts and saying, don't even think about doing this. Don't even think about making this plan a reality.
And remind us, Amy, if you will, just how much support does the U.S. provide to Egypt?
The U.S. provides about $1.4 billion a year to Egypt in grant aid, not loans, but grants that come from the generosity of the American taxpayer. The vast majority of that aid is military aid, and the U.S. has been supplying and equipping and training Egypt's military for about 4 decades now. The U.S. provides these days much less in terms of direct economic support to Cairo, but the U.S. plays a critical role, of course, in institutions like the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, who provide aid to Egypt that is a lifeline, literally, to keep President Sisi's economy from collapsing. So the U.S. has both a very important military and an economic relationship with Egypt for many decades now.
President Biden's national security strategy for the Middle East makes a point of partnering with countries that subscribe to a rules-based international order. How does Egypt fit that description?
Well, that's an excellent question. As soon as I read the Washington Post report last night, I actually went back and looked again at the national security strategy that the Biden administration issued last fall. And I was reminded that, in fact, when it comes to the Middle East and North Africa, the Biden White House has stated that its first principle, its first priority in the MENA region is supporting and strengthening relationships with partners, quote unquote, that, quote, uphold the international rules-based order. Now, it seems to me that the United States and Europe, at least, believe that Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine and the war crimes that Russia has committed and continues to commit in Ukraine are a very, very serious challenge to that international rules-based order. So Egypt, if this report is correct, was seeking to be on absolutely the wrong side of that U.S. priority. And I also found it very notable that the Egyptian government, in its response, has stressed that Egypt's official position on the war in Ukraine is basically to maintain almost like a neutral and independent position. This sort of neutrality or independent position has been a source of disappointment for the United States and for Europe, but certainly seeking to manufacture and provide arms for Russia for use in its Ukraine war, it would not leave Egypt in a position of neutrality. It would put them squarely on the side of Russia. So it's quite shocking.
Shocking. And I'll throw this one out at you too, Amy. The U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, he was recently in Egypt pushing for the production of artillery rounds for Ukraine because Egypt has the capacity to manufacture Soviet-style munitions. Now, we have to let that sink in. Is Washington really convinced by the backing it's getting from al-Sisi in Egypt?
Well, if I were serving in the Biden administration at this time, which I'm not, I would be asking very, very serious questions about our relationship with Egypt. The Biden administration is very clear-eyed. It knows, as did the Trump administration, as did the Obama administration, that Sisi has been pursuing much closer relations with Putin's Russia for some time. And I believe that the Biden administration, like its predecessors, has sought to manage that and see what it can do with its influence and leverage to keep Sisi more or less on side. But this, the game changed completely when Russia illegally invaded Ukraine last year. And so the idea that that the Egyptian leader would potentially be providing military support to Russia, puts Egypt in a very it raises some very uncomfortable questions about whose side Egypt is on when it comes to, not just U.S. priorities, but also European priorities.
Yeah.
Europe is a very important supporter and partner of the Egyptian regime, and the war in Ukraine is Europe's top priority as well right now.
Yeah, those are some very important questions that are demanding answers right now, that is for sure. Amy Hawthorne, Deputy Director of Research at the Project on Middle East Democracy. Amy, we appreciate your time and your insights tonight. Thank you. Well, I'm joined now by Holger Becker, a member of the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz's Social Democrats. He also sits on the Parliament's Committee for Digital Affairs. It's good to have you with us this evening. We have been here before. We've seen a controversy, a crisis where the NSA was caught spying on the cell phone of former Chancellor Angela Merkel. How worried are you this time about relations between Germany and the United States?
Good evening. To be honest, I would not be too much surprised because you honestly have to be pretty naive to expect that there is not some kind of mutual intelligent gathering, call it that way. So in that regards, I don't think that it will damage any existing relationships. It's more of an embarrassment, actually, for the various U.S. agencies. Mm-hmm. We still do not know exactly where the leak is coming from. I mean, that's obviously a source of concern for the U.S. It shows a lot of the classical components of a disinformation campaign. So you have a couple of genuine documents, you have a couple of documents which are obviously tampered with, and you have a couple of other documents where you actually don't know, are they genuine or are they fake? And so you actually generate a lot of mistrust, basically.
But let's focus on the documents that reportedly concern arms deliveries to Ukraine. I mean, we know that the picture that's being painted right now is a Ukrainian military that is not on the brink of collapsing, but almost at that point. Is that going to put pressure on Germany to deliver more heavy weapons to Ukraine? There has been controversy. There has been criticism of Germany dragging its feet when it comes to delivering tanks, for example.
I think the documents so far have, at least for the people who are, let's say, closer informed about the military situation, will not contain significant surprises. I mean, everybody has known that the ammunition situation is pretty dire, and I don't think it will add increasing pressure on either Germany or the other allies. What I think it does, however, is generate a discussion about logistics. Mm-hmm. And of course, the question, how can we actually safeguard deliveries? Because that's actually one of the more concerning issues on these documents, if they are genuine. Of course, it puts deliveries of weapons and ammunition in danger.
Mr. Becker, I want to ask you while we've got you here. You know, there were comments made over the weekend in an interview by the French president regarding the situation with Taiwan. Basically, President Macron was saying that Europe should be sovereign enough that it doesn't have to follow the U.S. if there is a conflict with China. It should be sovereign enough to decide who its allies will be. Is he speaking for Germany when he says that?
Not at all. Actually, I had the pleasure to spend today with the Taiwan representative here in Germany, Professor Xie, and we obviously discussed Macron's statements, and it becomes pretty clear that this is not a statement which has been cleared with the European partners. I think it's pretty clear that all the what we now call like-minded nations will have to stand together, and we will urge China to really stick to the current status quo. That's the message we have to send. And I don't think that the statements of Macron were meant to somehow distance ourselves from the US, and also to distance ourselves from the situation we have in Taiwan right now.
Well, perhaps the comments made by President Macron are filling a vacuum that has been created with the departure of Angela Merkel from the European scene. We know that the former German chancellor, she was very strong in her transatlanticist attitudes. And we know now that it seems the voice of Germany is not as strong with Chancellor Olaf Scholz. That is allowing President Macron to put his vision out there. Am I giving an accurate description of the situation?
I wouldn't say that. I think these were the same allegations which are actually made during Angela Merkel's term as well. I think what we definitely have to do is we have to put more emphasis on developing joint European positions in a changing geopolitical situation. I think that's for sure. And I'm actually urging politicians, especially on the European level, to come up with a more integrative process to formulate these European positions in a world which obviously is changing rapidly, and the phrase Zeitenwende cannot be overemphasized, because it really has shaken our fundamental beliefs in geopolitical policies, which means, and that's actually what's happening right now, is of course we're trying to develop national strategies in our relationship to Russia, to China, but that can only happen and will only be successful if that is done in a European context.
Yeah, well, there's still a lot to talk about. We hope you can come back and talk with us again. Mr. Holger Becker, a member of the German Parliament for the Social Democrats. Mr. Becker, we appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.